In today's video, we have the latest trade talk around the Toronto Maple Leafs, Carolina Hurricanes, and the Los Angeles Kings. Plus, we have some updates on the Ottawa Senators ownership situation. We should have more clarity on that soon. Plus, an update on potential candidates for the Maple Leafs' new vacant GM position, a couple of signings, and a little bit more other news around the league. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover today. Let's get in and get started with a couple of signings. First up, a couple of prospects here in their entry-level contracts. The Buffalo Sabres have signed left-shot defenseman Nikita Novikov, who is a 19-year-old left-shot D out of Russia. He was a 2021 sixth-round pick. He gets his 3-year entry-level contract on the book, so that should indicate he's coming to North America and will join their system, likely going to start one of their minor league affiliates. And the New York Islanders have also signed one of their prospects, a sixth-round pick from last year's 2022 NHL draft. Left winger from the WHL's Kamloops Blazers will be hosting this year's Memorial Cup, Dalen Kuffler. So he gets his 3-year ELC as well. So a couple of good prospect signings there for the Sabres and the Islanders. Of course, we saw Game 1 has been in the books now for both of the Eastern and Western Conference final. We have the Florida Panthers up 1-0 over the Hurricanes in a long game. It was a quadruple overtime, almost ended up into the fifth overtime period. But Matthew Tkachuk scored right at the end there a couple nights back. So they play Game 2 tonight. Because of the short turnaround, because of all the extra OT, looks like there will be a few lineup changes, and the Hurricanes are going to be going with Antti Ranta in goal tonight. Not sure at this point if there's going to be any other changes. It sounds like Bobrovsky is going to go for Florida here once again. By the time this video hits YouTube, that game is already going to be underway, though. And, of course, Vegas is up 1-0 now. In the Western Conference final of the Dallas Stars, they also had overtime in their first game, but thankfully it was not quadruple overtime in the first overtime period. With Brett Howden scoring the winning goal. Is a tight checking game. Good back and forth. I think there's a possibility, like I said, we could see that series be quite long and drawn out in some close games there, which is certainly good to see. The latest updates on Ottawa Senators ownership. Now, we know that the binding bids deadline passed a fair bit of time now. It's been about almost a week. We're waiting to get some updates from the team or from the bankers handling the sale on who is going to be given preferred bidding status. There is some speculation that they might be working behind the scenes with maybe seeing if there's interest from a couple of bids to maybe join and unite forces here together. So it's a possibility we might get kind of like a super group come out of that. It's not a guarantee, but something that's on the table, I guess. Front Office Sports has also been reporting that as of now into the weekend, it's kind of reported down to what they refer to as a few groups. It's believed a couple of groups like the Michael Andlauer group and then the Kimmel brother group, who have both had dealings with the NHL before. Andlauer is still currently a minority stakeholder in the Montreal Canadiens, which of course would be sold if this becomes successful. And of course the Kimmel brothers were former minority owners in the Penguins organization, so they're people that are well known to the NHL. So of course with the Nico Sparks group, they keep getting a lot of attention. They keep adding celebrity after celebrity after celebrity. And to be completely honest, as much as that's kind of neat in a way to see all this interest from a variety of people, including former Canadian Olympic gold medalist sprinter Donovan Bailey and Canadian comedian Russell Peters, who's been an international success. And obviously, I think he mainly lives in the U.S. now, but still, those are the two most recent celebrities added to the group. Of course, you get Snoop Dogg in there as well. There's also some other former NHL players and other well-known people from Hollywood involved in that group as well. I know Ian Mendes of The Athletic put an article talking about all the different groups and stuff. And one thing that you see these celebrities being announced as being added to the bid now, but the NHL's not really going to be factoring that in. Of course, it's not just NHL here. We've got obviously the league board of governors have to approve the sale, but essentially it's going to be the Ottawa Senators board and the bankers who are handling it that are going to make the recommendation, of course, for the bid that's selected to move forward with. And then, of course, they'll have to get confirmed and approved by the NHL Board of Governors. But it's not really just a matter of celebrity here that's going to be taken into account. Clearly, money talks, like the financials and the plans for the franchise moving forward of my farm much more important. And they're not going to be able to really factor in other celebrities, being another small stakeholder when the bids are already been submitted like a week ago. So I'm not really sure, what to think of that group. I mean, it's interesting in a way that you see all these different groups. I know, it's a lot of different minorities covered in this group too, which is nice to see. At the same time, like, it makes you wonder, there's so many people, such a large group, who would be in charge, kind of gives you some, a little bit of concern that way, just on how the structure of things are, but we'll see. We'll get more clarity on that early in the week. The Mount Forest Eagle and Maple Leafs are suddenly looking for a new GM after Friday's news that kind of caught a lot of people by surprise, that Kyle Dubas is not going to be returning as the GM of the Maple Leafs, and it wasn't even his own choice. It was Brendan Shanahan and the Leafs' choice to move on without him here and go down a new path and a new direction to find a new manager. It took a lot of people by surprise, and we have obviously extensive videos on the channel discussing that scenario. But right now, it looks like according to a lot of the sports betting sites, of course, they even have options where you can place bets on who's going to be the new GM. And the name that's out there that seems to be getting the most talk, and it certainly has the best odds according to the betting sites, is former Flames GM Brad Treliving. He seems to be a front runner, but there is also confirmation as well from NHL reporters that Brendan Shanahan has reached out to NHL head office and Gary Bettman for assistance and recommendations on potential candidates. It's not an unusual thing. It's a common thing for teams to talk to the league about potential candidates, obviously, and get some recommendations that way. So we'll see. Shanahan made it known that somebody with experience would be a great asset, but it doesn't mean 100% it's going to be an older, more experienced GM. But most of the other names that have been floating around are all, I guess they're younger, or younger in terms of experience at the very least. Whether you're talking about Brandon Pridham, who's with the team, or Tulsky out of Carolina, or some of the other younger up-and-coming executives as well. I didn't get the impression that it's not the type of person and candidate that Shanahan really wants to move forward with after hiring Kyle Dubas with no experience all those years ago, and where things ended up. I kind of wonder if they're going to want to go with a little bit more of an experienced name here. But at the same time, I know that even Elliot Friedman on his podcast mentioned that even though he's likely not available, that a name that they'd have heavy interest in would be Doug Armstrong, who's the GM of the Blues. But really, I don't see that happening. And to be honest, no offense to Shanahan, I don't see Doug Armstrong going to Toronto where he would not have full control. I think a big part of the issue with the breakdown in the relationship between Dubas and Shanahan is that Shanahan did not want to give Dubas more control and power on making moves without him consenting to it. I know there's a lot of talk that Shanahan would often overrule them on certain deals. And obviously, that can be difficult. It makes it stressful enough just in the market alone with all the pressure that comes with that team. And then when you have a president working above you, that's always, having to approve all your deals, that certainly can make your job challenging as well. So we'll see where this goes. I would imagine, though, that it won't be long before we get more of an idea, and the Leafs are going to want to move quickly here because they do have a lot of business to take care of, like we talked about, including an extension for Austin Matthews. We get free agency coming up, and they have a tons of players on their team with expiring contracts, and they're going to have to be ready on day one of free agency to make sure they get some players that they really covet here to fill some of their spots. So they need to get a GM in place, very promptly here. Now, staying with the Leafs, there's certainly, I want to talk a little bit further about William Nylander. There's some rumors speculating, of course, that he could be one of the players that is traded to shake things up in Toronto. There's a lot of people out there that are, tons of articles, whether it be Leafs media, Leafs bloggers, etc., all talking about what we could expect for change. It seems to be the general consensus is that there's a good chance between Marner and Nylander that one of the two will be dealt to shake things up, get a different kind of player that can play a different style. Not to say that they're looking for that Kachuk Huberdeau type of trade, but something along those lines to change the DNA of the top players on the team. But there's been more talk about Nylander in the last couple of days because it was reported that he left after the Toronto exit meetings to head to Sweden, and he was supposed to be participating in the World Championships and joining Team Sweden. He was heading over with fellow Leaf and fellow countryman defenseman Timothy Liljegren. Well, Liljegren's joined Team Sweden, but Nylander has yet to play and has not been mentioned by Team Sweden so far through their social media channels or anything else. So Nylander is not officially on a roster, and there was some rumor speculating that the Maple Leafs themselves had asked him not to play and basically wanted to do what you'd call like an asset management type of situation, where they are thinking about obviously making some big trades, and they really didn't want any of their players like Nylander, who could be on the trade block, to be possibly getting hurt in any kind of international competition. So that's where a lot of people are running with that, saying that maybe Nylander's going to go. He's not playing all of a sudden. Things change. The Leafs must have put a stop to it. But I know I've seen Darren Dreger report that that's not necessarily the case here, that we can kind of pump the brakes on that. Not to say that Nylander couldn't be traded. I think personally that if they're going to make a big move, and if they do want to change things up, I think there is a good chance that either Nylander or Marner are traded, and they get some different kind of players to shake things up. However, that's very early, premature to say that's the case. And it's also, I don't think, the case where they would prevent him from playing for Team Sweden. But what was more likely, according to Dreger, is that after he get over there, he kind of realized that he's going to end up taking a roster spot from somebody who's already been playing with the team and would now suddenly be cut. One of those players who could be cut would actually be his own brother. And of course, that's not something he really wanted to see happen. So this seems like, from what Dreger is saying, that this is more of a Williams decision himself. So I guess we will see. Not to say he couldn't be traded. He's heavily rumored to be one of the players the Leafs could move to shake things up. I just don't know this is a scenario where we can really put the two together and say that they're connected. But we'll have to wait and see more information. But that's what we know about that right now. Elliot Friedman's reporting that the Los Angeles Kings are a team to watch. Obviously, we know they're going to be busy. Obviously, they want to re-sign Gavrikov, who they acquired from Columbus at the trade deadline. If they can, of course, it's going to be challenging, between Gavrikov and addressing their goaltending situation. They're going to likely need to try to free up some salary cap space to give themselves some more wiggle room and more flexibility. And Friedman's reporting that a player that they're willing to entertain discussions on, that they'll consider doing to free up the space, is winger Victor Arvidsson. Now, Arvidsson actually had a pretty good playoff series this year, like pretty good regular season. I mean, he is a good value for what his contract is. He's been a pretty good fit in Los Angeles, but certainly Gavrikov is important to the back end. I know a lot of his teammates really want to see him stay as well. And I think we're going to see possibly some other moves with Kings defensemen as well. Back there between, Walker, Dursey. It's reported that one of them could possibly, or both of them even, could find themselves traded this offseason. And of course, Arvidsson's another one, but goaltending's another one too. Like, they picked up Korpisalo. He had his moments where he did play well. He could be re-signed, it's a possibility, but it's believed that the Kings might be trying to see if they can't upgrade that position further. It might be involved in trade talks with other teams that might have a goalie available. For example, if Connor Hellebuyck becomes available in Winnipeg, or John Gibson in Anaheim or other places, they could be looking to a more experienced, higher level goaltender that might be able to upgrade it further, and they're going to need some space to possibly bring them in, and they're going to need some players to go out to make it happen. So Arvidsson's one of the guys that you could watch and be possibly on the move. Now, the Arizona Coyotes, we know that they're a team that obviously is facing a lot of adversity right now in their arena situation. I know there seems to be some hope and some optimism in the air in terms of them finding a site to maybe build a new arena in Mesa around the old Fiesta Mall area. I don't know if that could work or not. Based on what we're hearing, it's a possibility that they might be able to build an arena without having to go through a vote to the public in a public referendum. And so obviously that would probably be helpful. But then I guess you got to ask yourself, as if you're worried if the public is going to vote down any arena, and that's your big concern, that if you have to go to a public vote that you're not going to get your way, are these people actually going to support your team? Yes, I know that there's definitely some hardcore fans in the valley, in the area for sure, and that they will find a way to support this team no matter what. I have no doubt about that. But the question I have is, based on what we've seen on this team in the future, is there enough of them? And if all these people, no matter what kind of neighborhood or the city you go to in the area, if they're going to vote down any deals to build an arena, I just really question what they have for support there. But it's affecting your players now. And some players might be looking to get out of Arizona, like Clayton Keller. We don't know for sure. We know that Clayton Keller's agents had a meeting with the Coyotes. His dad on the Twitter post, which he's now saying that he was hacked. I'm like, okay, sure, you were hacked. Okay. But obviously he's quite upset and needs clarity on the situation. Friedman and Muriel were talking about the Keller situation on the 32 Sons podcast, and they said that as of right now, no trade request has officially been made, but that he really needs clarity on the situation soon. Now, I've seen reports from Craig Morgan saying that there's no definitive timeline, that the NHL is looking for updates from the Coyotes on a new arena deal, but it could take several months. And I just don't know how much patience there's going to be here. And if enough players are that frustrated and they start getting pressure from the NHLPA, they're going to see a lot of players that might want out, and it could really create a difficult situation for sure. So, could it get to a point if things drag on too much that Keller wants out? It's a real possibility. Logan Cooley, who's their top prospect and number 3 overall pick from the last draft, definitely a player who should be turning pro. Too good for college hockey, in my opinion. Was a top player in college hockey this year, and he's opted to stay in college another year, return and stay in Minnesota because he doesn't want to get into that mess. And he was asked about it, and he even said that the arena situation and the uncertainty over where the team's future is absolutely had an impact on his decision. So, if they lose Cooley and guys like Keller don't want to stick around, even though they have lots of prospects and lots of picks in their system right now, this could get more chaotic and more ugly before they ever get an arena figured out. And I just don't know how much patience the NHL is going to have with this situation. The Carolina Hurricanes as well were reportedly very, very eager to make a deal to try to bring back a centerman, Elias Lindholm. Of course, he used to be with the Hurricanes where he was drafted and started his career, but of course was traded to the Calgary Flames. Apparently they had a lot of discussions with the Flames around the deadline, but of course the deal was never consummated. Lindholm is still there, and he's going to be entering the final year of his contract this coming season on a pretty bargain deal. Now, Friedman's reporting that the most likely type of contract Lindholm's going to be looking for in his next contract would be something similar to what he's seen Bo Horvat sign with the New York Islanders. So that's pretty decent money here. Now, Lindholm, it's hard to say if he has a future in Calgary or not, but it makes a ton of sense to go back to Carolina. We know they need another scoring ability. We need another top scorer in that lineup, ideally, and he can play center as well. So to me, he's a great fit there. Looking at what they're missing in the playoffs right now with Svechnikov and Pacioretty, obviously they're in round 3. They're only down 1 game to Florida, but we'll see how they do. This has been their issue getting over the hump, getting to the Stanley Cup final, is that they can only get so far in the playoffs because they run out of scoring. They just don't have enough game breakers to help you get over the hump. And he's another guy that could be a big help to that. If he can get back to being a 40-goal scoring centerman like he was last season, not the one just ended with the year before, that would be a huge help. So, again, look for Carolina to re-engage with the Calgary Flames. Might be something we could see at the draft. Doesn't mean for sure it's going to happen, of course. And if Lindholm has dealt, it could also go elsewhere. But with the Flames having a lot of key players entering the final year of their contracts and everything that they've been through with Daryl Sutter and the changes, of course, we don't know what direction they're going to end in right now because the Flames need a new coach and a new general manager as well. So until they get their people in place, we don't know really what to expect there. But there's lots of players that are going to be either going to be extended or possibly traded in Calgary. You're bound to see some change based on all their contracts, and that part we know is pretty much a given. So could Lindholm end up back in Carolina? It's a decent chance. There's certainly lots of interest to bring him back. Not much we can say with certainty. And if he is available again this offseason, I would imagine it's safe to say those talks could be re-examined. That's all your news from now. Let me know your thoughts on all that down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.